Shoe polish, and it's on the CD that I recorded 2 years ago. And I kind of owe this story to a mentor of mine, Jerry Rosen, who was a professor at Sonoma State for many, many years. He passed away 2 years ago in November, and I was writing some really quirky, kind of almost Tom Robbins, Vonnegut-like fiction, and he said, you know, I just don't get any heart, John. He goes, I want you to write stuff that's got heart. And so he kind of challenged me to start writing stories that I guess somehow deal with the heart. So, shoe polish. Black Shinola shoe polish was the color of my humiliation. It was at my father's hands that the infliction of this punishment was administered, and it remains a blemish in my memory, much like a tattoo of some former girlfriend remains a physical reminder that something went wrong. My father was obese, and I don't say that to be malicious, but to indicate that his size was that of someone who was dangerously powerful, but covered in a ring of fat. His hands were thick with stubby fingers that looked like some kind of heavy-duty work gloves for industrial work. Since he was a mechanic, he used his hands all the time, gripping the different wrenches and exerting his strength to remove the parts that machines put together. And his will was as hardened as the steel he twisted in his occupation. So I was 12. I remember that I had stayed at some friend's house until dinner time. When I got home, my mother said that we were going to the movies. I ate a sandwich, changed my clothes, and waited for my brothers in the living room. Why aren't your shoes polished? I looked down at my black wingtips, noticing the scuff marks I made while coming home from school. I looked back to my father. It'll only take a minute, I said. Then get your ass moving if you expect to come to the movies with us. I rushed to the bathroom and reached under the sink. I pulled out a fragment of t-shirt, a buffing cloth, and some black Shinola. Then I slipped the shoes off and began wiping them with the old chunk of shirt, unscrewing the cap on the bottle of polish, which contained a stem with a little sponge on the end. I quickly dabbed the ink-like liquid across the scuff marks on each shoe. Then I lightly covered the remaining areas with a thin coat, which I thought would suffice. Looming over my shoulder was the shadow of my father. He cast his eyes at the progress I was making. Then he reached for the piece of shirt that I used to wipe the shoes. Why isn't this damp? I didn't think it had to be. My shoes weren't really dirty. I've taught you how to polish shoes. When you do a job, you do it right. He tossed a grimy piece of cloth into my face. Dampen that damn thing and bring the stuff into the living room, he said, as he pointed at the supplies I had spread out before me. After putting newspaper on the carpet in front of the chair where my father was sitting, I placed everything in the order I anticipated using it from left to right. Now let's see you get those shoes ready to be polished, he said. I grabbed the moist cloth and began rubbing it over the tips of the shoes. I glanced up to see my father's eyes scrutinizing each motion of my hands, causing me to rub more rapidly, as if the shoe were some kind of Aladdin's lamp that would make itself suddenly become perfect at my wish. The rough hands grabbed a shoe and the cloth. Let me show you how to do it, he said. The movement of the hand holding the cloth was slow and deliberate. It searched for the crevices that dust collected in, circling in and out several times, then crept its way along the edge of the sole until it found the seam where the heel was attached. He rotated the shoe, gave it his detailed inspection, then placed it on the floor in front of me. I want to see you do that other shoe. I started rubbing along the seams of the leather, trying to imitate the motions he had made. You're not watching what you're doing. Work that dirt out of there, he said as he pointed to the seam along the side of the shoe. I rubbed harder. That's not what I meant. I just showed you how to do it. Do it right now. His open hand stung the side of my face. My eyes started watering. I tried to hold it back, but he was putting too much pressure on me. You better start doing it right, he threatened. I thrust the cloth against the shoe and made the motions to clean the dirt. I sniffled. Then, from the corner of my eye, I glimpsed my father's hand swinging at me again. Just before contact was made, I dodged, and the inertia of his swing was enough to pull him out of his chair, causing him to sprawl forward on his thick belly. I realized my error in judgment as he turned his bloated red face to see me. I started to move again, but he grabbed me around the ankle and pulled me back within his reach. The hands pummeled my shoulders, chest, head, and back. I heard the ripping of my sport shirt, and I tasted a metallic taste of blood in the corner of my mouth. Jack, what are you doing? My mother screamed. His head spun around to face her, and she stood there watching, half cowering in the doorway that led to the hallway and bedrooms. I saw my brother Mark stare wide-eyed from behind her shoulder. "Just go in the other room," he commanded. She hesitated. "I said go in the other room, damn it!" She held her hand to her mouth, then turned away. I felt betrayed. My skin was stinging from the strong slaps and punches. My father grabbed the bottle of polish and screwed the top and began rubbing the moist sponge across my face. I tried to pull away. He dipped and dipped the sponge back in and continued. The coolness of the liquid helped make the burning in my flesh subside, but I felt a sickness grow deep inside my stomach. It rebelled, and I threw up on the newspaper. Polish dripped faster and faster. Within moments, my chest and back were covered with little streams that scurried down beneath the waistline of my pants and soaked into my shorts. When my father finally released me, I ran to a mirror. I was transfigured. I had become some kind of aborigine. I went to my room and cried the rest of the night. There's a hiatus. I made my first visit to intensive care when I was 22. My father's obese body was on a slight incline in the bed, with wires running to the different parts of his body, transmitting his body functions to little monitor needles. A tube running from an IV bottle was plugged into his wrist. An oxygen line was wrapped around his head with two little plug-like openings inserted in his nostrils. I sat in the chair for hours watching him sleep. He was so pale. I remember thinking that he would be better off dead than be left as an invalid for my mother to take care of, or for that matter, any of our family to have to take care of. He woke up. His eyes slowly rolled to the side, then stopped. He seemed to squint a bit, to focus, to see where he was. As he saw me, he held out a hand. I walked over to him. I hadn't touched my father in at least 12 years, but suddenly I was drawn to his burly hand, wanting to squeeze it to prove to myself how powerful he still was. I gave a light handhold. He turned his head back and forth slowly as he tried to make words come out. He relaxed his grasp and bent his finger towards me to indicate he wanted me to lean forward. I turned my face to the side, putting my ear near his lips so I could hear what he was trying to say. Slowly, he turned his head towards me and kissed me on the cheek. I was shocked. I looked at him and saw the tears welling up in his eyes and beginning to roll down his cheeks. He sighed. "I'm so sorry." I'd never seen my father cry. He was always a tough old man. My mother had a picture of him even from when he was in the Marine Corps, where two guys were standing on his shoulders. It just seemed like he would always be some sort of a carnival sideshow strongman without emotions like love. I started to cry. Hell, I just let it pour out. I wanted a flood to come through and clear everything out. He held me with what little strength he had. "I don't want to die without you knowing that," he whispered. Sometimes, just thinking about him makes me want to cry. We never got a chance to make up for lost time. Oh, and I still don't polish my shoes.